everybody. Welcome to Banfield. It is Tuesday. It's good to have you here. Listen, I want to start with something that I have been waiting for. I think y'all have too. If you're a fan of wrestling, even if you're not, you can't not know Vince McMahon. And you cannot know the allegations that have been made about him because, I mean, even if you have never known the guy, you know the crazy stuff that came out in a lawsuit against him. Like real kink, big time kink. Allegations that he sex trafficked a person who worked for him and that the crazy sex in the back room was, well, let's just say it involved feces and all sorts of other stuff. Well, that was the story. And we just kept waiting and waiting for Vince McMahon to respond. And guess what? Today he did. The deadline. He made the deadline and he came out with some allegations of his own. And they're doozies. Like, seriously. He says that he wasn't making the accuser do some rough sex. He says she was initiating it. And he said there are all sorts of messages saying how much she loved him and wanted it and wanted him to see her with the other guys that she alleges he made her have sex with. Here's the thing. There's an issue with the evidence, and that's where this show drills down big. So do not go anywhere. I'm curious to find out if he's going to beat the rap and if it's the beginning of a comeback. Or wait till you hear the evidence. All right, then the other thing is, if you've been following the Karen Read murder trial, something happened. There was a witness that said something that matters. Because all along, we've been real critical of the prosecution's case against her, right? So many things didn't add up. So many things just didn't make sense in the prosecution's case until a witness got on the stand today. And it's sort of weird to say this, but talked about a black blob. And suddenly a black blob might make this lady a murderer. I'm going to tell you what the black blob is, where the black blob was found, and why the black blob matters. All of that in a moment. And then in the Micah Miller story, yet again, more stuff about that estranged husband, John Paul Miller, Pastor Miller. And it's not good. It's not good. You've seen the evidence that we have presented to you. Text messages that he has sent to her that are appalling, sent to her sister. Accusations that he admitted to, that he slashed her tires and that he harassed her. Crazy stuff that a lot of his critics will say drove her to take her own life. And then there were the appearances he made from the pulpit, talking about his wife having taken her life. The eulogy, I tried to raise her from the dead. If you had the same ick feeling I did watching that, have we got something for you? I'm no expert in body language, but tonight I do have one who's got a lot to say about what's on those tapes. Let's start here, though. When it comes to pro wrestling, it ain't over till it's over. And that might be true of wrestling lawsuits, too. If anybody ever seemed to be on the ropes, it was Vince McMahon, the founder and the driving force of WWE, later ousted, muzzled, and disgraced by bombshell claims, dirty, dirty claims of sex trafficking and sex assault. He's been all but invisible since former WWE staffer Janelle Grant filed her lawsuit in January. But now, he and his attorneys are fighting back. In a brand new court filing, McMahon says Grant not only wasn't a victim, she was a willing participant and often the initiator of rough sex. He claims that she texted him that, quote, she was in love with him, that he was her best friend, that she fantasized about being held down, that she enjoyed the pain, and that she wanted him to watch her having sex with other people. Essentially, McMahon is claiming the exact opposite of Grant's allegations. Janelle Grant claims that she was often forced to have sex with him and that other bigwigs from the WWE were part of it and that she was blackmailed into silence. Janelle Grant's filing includes actual text messages, allegedly from McMahon, that back up her side of the story. Here's where it gets hinky, if it wasn't already. McMahon's filing paraphrases texts, right? It paraphrases text messages from memory. because he says he deleted them all when they broke up. And McMahon says he has issues with Janelle's messages. He says they lack the proper context since we don't get the benefit of seeing what Grant was texting back to him. For her part, Grant's lawyers are saying this about McMahon's long-awaited, on-the-record response to her lawsuit, and I quote, "For any comment, see our original filing. We're confident the truth is laid out well there." This is where I bring in Dave Meltzer. He is a wrestling reporter. He's an MMA reporter. He's also the editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and he's a friend of the show. Dave, it's good to have you back. Thank you for being here. Okay, Janelle, she's got messages, actual ones that she printed in her suit. He's got memory of messages, and jurors usually like evidence. But when it comes to the brand of the WWE, does it even matter what a juror is going to say, what the evidence actually is? Is the story out and that's enough for them, and do they care?
I mean, as far as if you're talking about the future of the WWE as a business, the WWE as a business will survive this. They're very, very popular right now, and there's nothing that's going to happen in the lawsuit or anything that's going to damage their brand. I mean, as far as Vince McMahon himself, that's a completely different story. As far as, he's out. And I don't anticipate him being back, although people have said that before and he's come back. But this time, I think it went a little bit too far. But now he's trying to clear his name. I don't know if he can, but this is his attempt.
Good point. Okay, to that point, he wants to clear his name. He's a huge brand, and maybe if he doesn't want to be back in business, he just doesn't want to go out this way. But I am curious if he will take this all the way to trial. You know, today was the deadline to respond, and he did. And you got to admit that this isn't the first story, right, of allegations against him. Back, I think, in July of 2022, Wall Street Journal, they said McMahon paid more than $12 million to 4 different women over a period of 16 years for sexual misconduct. So do you think he's going to take this to trial?
Well, it's actually more than that, in the sense of there's cases that have been alleged going back to 1985 or 86. But I do not believe this is going to trial, and he does not want it to go to trial because his lawyers are arguing that it should not go to trial, that it should go to binding arbitration, and then whatever is ruled by the arbitration, that ends it. He said that the NDA that they both signed said that if there's any disputes, they cannot be settled in court. They have to be settled in arbitration in Stamford, Connecticut. So that is what he's arguing for. His lawyers are trying to get rid of the suit and send it to an arbitrator and not to a jury. And it would be...
Yeah, but who knows if that would, go ahead.
But I mean, the thing is, to clear his name, I don't know that clears his name. Something that we're all the, it's like on one hand, they want us to say that, we want all the evidence out there. On the other hand, they're trying to put it in arbitration and keep the evidence away. So it's kind of contradictory. But I think that they want it in arbitration and for it to go away. And Janelle Grant's side wants it going to trial, and a judge is going to have to rule on that one way or the other very soon.
While we've been talking, all these pictures have been flashing between us. I mean, he is just no stranger to the camera, right? He shows up everywhere. On the big announcement of the merger, he was front and center, and this lawsuit was dropping. But I have not seen hide nor hair of him. Where is he? What's he doing right now?
He's around. I mean, I've seen very little of him, I know that he's, he's went on some trips. He's been in some places, and I know he wants to get and start some sort of new business. And he doesn't, he's 78 years old and doesn't want this to be the last memory of him. He did this entire career, and now, he's seen as a total disgrace, and he doesn't want that to be his last image. So as far as whatever business he wants to be in, that I don't know, but I could see some of the people that were in WWE, a lot of them have left. I think some of them may end up with him if he starts something up. I don't think it'll be in wrestling, though.
Well, let me ask you about that in a minute. First thing I want to ask is this thing on the bottom of the screen is Vince McMahon prepping a comeback, and I wonder if he beats this rap, if he wins, or if he's able to make Janelle Grant's claims go away, even though they're hanging out there on the internet. Would he be welcome back at the WWE? Would he want to go back to the WWE?
I think he would want to. I don't think that they would want him. Everyone was very relieved that he was gone. And I think it's a step. I just don't see it because, again, even if these ones go away, you've got 40 years of stuff, that you're talking about. And, maybe in a different era, it didn't play as badly. But in this era, all of that stuff doesn't play well. So, no, I don't see.
What about this rival, potential rival entity? Would he start up another wrestling entity, some sort of a promotional, I don't even know what you call it, because it's not really a sport, but it is a sport.
A rival company. I don't think so. People close to him have told me no. Almost every wrestler worth anything right now is signed to one of the two big companies. He couldn't compete with them now. It's just not the time. He's got money, but he'd be losing so much money for so many years, and he's 78 years old. Like if he was 48 and just go, hey, I'll lose money for 5 years, but I'm going to turn this around. I'm Vince McMahon. I could see that, but at 78, I don't see starting a wrestling company at 78 to be a wise move and a move that he would make.
So here's the personal question, because I live in Connecticut, and I keep wondering if I'm going to see Linda McMahon around, and I thought at first, oh yeah, they divorced. They must have divorced. And I had to look it up. They are not divorced. What's the story between them? Because this is just about the worst, ugliest, disastrous mess that any wife could ever have to go through. Is she going through it alone? Has she basically cut and run? What's their story?
They've been split up forever, but they've never gotten divorced, probably because of all the complications of the ownership of the company and all of those things. Yeah. So I don't, if they didn't get divorced.
But not even a friendship?
Oh, that I don't know. But the only time I've seen it brought up to her, she really blew it off, whatever. It was I don't care what he's doing type of a thing when this lawsuit first came out. So, she hasn't said anything really about it other than really being dismissive of him.
Well, note to men out there, if you do this kind of thing and it ends up on the internet, it's about the most humiliating pain, a woman can go through. So you're not just enjoying yourself, you're destroying another. That's just the way it is. And he's admitted to this. He's admitted it to being consensual, no matter what. It's gross. Hey, Dave Meltzer, thanks for being on. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Still to come, she admits that she was drunk, but she swears by what she saw in the middle of the night. A party guest said there was a black blob in the snow outside the house where John O'Keefe was found dead in the morning. Now, more than 2 years later, a Massachusetts jury is going to have to decide what or who that blob might have been and whether it makes Karen Reed a murderer. That story next. Since the moment Karen Reed was accused of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, and that was 2 winters ago, one fact, and maybe one fact only, has been undisputed. Karen dropped John off at a house party after a night of drinking. And after that, nothing is certain, except that O'Keefe's dead body was found hours later, lying in the snow out in front of the house that he may or may not have even entered. The house where the party was. The prosecutors say that Reed hit and killed him with her SUV, smashing her taillight in the process. And then they claim that Reed made a big show of it, coming back in the morning pretending to look for him. The defense and a lot of Reed's supporters say that's just BS. They say that O'Keefe was killed inside that party house after Reed went home and that someone dumped him in the front yard. Today at Karen Reed's murder trial, 4 people took the stand, all of them who were at the house party where John O'Keefe was last seen alive. One of the witnesses testified that as she was leaving that party, and admittedly not completely sober, she saw something near the spot where O'Keefe's body was found.
As you drive by home, what, if anything, did you observe?
I did notice behind Sarah and Jen, I did notice something out of the ordinary, like a black blob in the ground by the flagpole.
Where in relation to the flagpole was this black object that you saw?
I'd probably say close to the street, but in their lawn, right kind of in front of the flagpole next to it.
With regard to the object that you saw in that area, the flagpole, can you describe how big an object it was that you saw?
I'd probably say 5 or 6 feet, long.
A black blob, she said, on the ground, near the road, in the snow, about 5 or 6 feet long. That sure tracks with John O'Keefe lying dead or dying in the front yard. Witness also said that earlier that night she saw a black SUV near that spot, but that it was gone when she spotted the black blob. The defense tried to get her to admit that she never saw a body, but the prosecutors objected to that. I want to welcome Sean McDonough back to the show. He is a retired DEA supervisory special agent who's been investigating this case on his own pretty much full-time for a year now. Sean, good to have you back on the show. Thank you. I know that we have talked before about your feelings that you are dead set that Karen Read is innocent, that this was an absolute disaster, and that she shouldn't be in that courtroom. But this black blob thing, this testimony today that there was some 5 to 6 feet long black blob at the time when there was an SUV there. What do you make of this testimony?
Well, Ashleigh, first of all, thank you for having me back. Today for the prosecution, this had to be the most embarrassing day for the prosecution. It was been a disaster since day one. However, this particular witness is a pivotal witness for both the prosecution and now the defense. This witness today, Julie Nagel, the first time in over 2.5 years, or roughly 2.5 years, did she ever mention anything to the word blob or even describe 5 to 6 feet. Today was the only day. And she was not interviewed for months after John was found dead on that lawn.
But I still say, look, jurors don't know all about how investigations happen. They know what they hear in the courtroom. And to hear that she saw something, despite the fact that a vigorous cross-examination will point out what you said, wouldn't it land with them that, there was somebody there. There was somebody there. There was someone or something that looked an awful lot like a person in that spot.
Right. Exactly. However, she's the only one of all the witnesses all the guests that left that house, came out the front door and never saw a thing. However, she admittedly stated on the stand that she was intoxicated. She'd been drinking since 6 p.m. and that evening she had multiple beers, and she, by her own words, said, I was completely intoxicated. And she left that morning around 1:45 in the morning. And her whole testimony is suspect because the main witness that they're trying to avoid talking about is a gentleman by the name of Colin Albert. Okay, Colin Albert has been one of the named third-party culprits by the defense. She today, as I said, she's pivotal for the defense. She today said that Colin Albert, in her own testimony, left at 11:30, close to 11:45 in the evening on the 28th, which contradicts everyone else's statement thus far. So she's suspect on her own testimony today. And the defense had an incredible back and forth with her as she left. She was on the left side away from the lawn, and she never once told anyone, didn't call the son back, who's a son of a Boston police officer, never said anything about the possibility. The person next to her was a nurse. If she thought this person was in trouble, the defense got out that she's basically said, I did nothing for months.
Let me ask you this. From my vantage point, which is not in a courtroom right now, and that is so different, right? I keep wondering when the big aha moment is going to happen, because you brought it to my attention that you had video of Karen Read's taillight fully intact at a time when if she had actually hit and killed John O'Keefe and broken her taillight, that picture wouldn't exist. When is that going to be the big moment in court?
Well, I can tell you right now, the prosecution tried to put in a dash cam video last week that was going to depict the actual condition of the taillight. It was a bomb. They didn't show a thing. It was actually the back of the taillight, which is not the issue. The actual issue is right there, that side taillight around that circle. Now, I have one better for you, Ashleigh. I have two sources close to this investigation that have absolutely confirmed that if you have the picture I have that's up there that has a red, right there, see that red circle? That is what the trooper who arrested Karen said was shattered with a large piece missing. If you can see there, right there in that picture, there is no wires, there's no LEDs. If you can go back to the, right there, that is a functioning side taillight with wires, with the plastic, two layers of plastic and the LEDs. That's at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4.5 hours where the prosecution said that taillight was cracked beyond, right like that. Supposedly that's the taillight right there. That's going to be
that's what I think a jury is going to freak out about, right? That like if a jury sees that and they see the timestamps and they say, well, it's impossible, that case is over. When is that going to happen, or how would it happen in court?
Actually, 35 years in the game, law enforcement, when I saw these pictures, my heart dropped. I said, this is incredible. One more thing, Ashleigh. There's also confirmation that the 45 alleged pieces they found on that lawn around the street has been put back together in a nice little package to show that the taillight is put back together. That's been documented, and I don't know how these troopers can actually try to pull a fast one on all of us to say in a blizzard, they found 45 pieces of red plastic. Not only did they find it, but they put it all back together again. It can't be that way. You can't have a person getting hit by a car at 12:30 and smash a light that they're saying at the end of the day, that light was smashed beyond compare, and have it right there on your screen at 5 o'clock in the morning. It cannot be. It just cannot be.
One last question, and it's an important one, because everybody who's watching is thinking the same thing. Wow, that is so compelling. But why would 23 state troopers, police sergeants, lieutenants, and captains on the witness list, why would they all get together and lie and frame an innocent woman?
Because someone has a lot of dirty laundry on somebody powerful that made these people risk their careers and their freedom. That's the unfortunate thing.
Okay, you know what? You're coming back, because this case is still on and the evidence is still being paraded through that courtroom, and you fascinate me. Sean McDonough, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ashleigh. It's a pleasure.
Still to come, he is a person of interest in at least 4 murders in the Pacific Northwest. So you would think the cops would want to lock him up pretty soon. But guess what? He's already in prison and about to be released. What a quandary. How do cops keep him behind bars while they race to prove his next case? Brian Enton is on it, and he's live from Portland when we come back. Letting a convicted felon out of prison early, that doesn't always work out well. But the Jesse Lee Calhoun situation is different, to say the least. Mr. Calhoun was put away for theft and burglary in the state of Oregon. But in 2020, he did something interesting. He and other inmates got together and they helped to fight some wildfires. So for that brave work that he did, his sentence was commuted in 2021. He'd actually been due to get out in 2022, but that little gift, that saved him 11 months in the slammer. Sweet. Fast forward to 2023 and the discovery of a string of murders in and around Portland. At least 4 murders, 4 dead women in a 4-month span. At first, the investigators said they weren't connected. But then later, they said they were connected. And then bam, they reportedly said Jesse Lee Calhoun was a person of interest. So prosecutors called on the governor to revoke that very nice little gift of commutation and put him right back in the slammer for those last 11 months. And that is why tonight investigators know exactly where to find Jesse Lee Calhoun, behind bars. The trouble is Calhoun's sentence is up in 24 days. June 7th, tick-tock. And so far, no charges have been filed against him or anybody else in those murders. So naturally, our Brian Enton instantly went to Portland to start digging on what is going on there, and he joins me live from there tonight. This is such a fascinating case. So here's a guy who's kind of like probably packing up and pulling down his, artwork on the jail cell walls, getting ready to leave. And I'm just curious at this point if there's going to be any movement in the case of the serial killings that he's one of the persons of interest in. Yesterday you said you thought there might be. The family was feeling pretty good about this. Have you learned anything new today?
Yeah, so we have sources who tell us that there is a lot still happening behind the scenes and that there may be some kind of outcome to this very, very soon. Obviously, we're here, we're waiting, but the clock is ticking, which is what makes this case so unique and disturbing, too. I mean, the fact that he is going to get out of jail in less than a month now and that he's a person of interest in these serial killings, and they are just brutal, awful killings. I met today with Kristen Smith's sister. She is one of the victims. We actually went to the cemetery where Kristen is buried. It's so sad what these families have gone through. They felt like the cases weren't investigated thoroughly in the beginning, and the police told them they didn't think it was a serial killer. Then that story changed. Now they're waiting for justice. Listen to what Kristen's sister told me just a little while ago.
You and your mom and the other moms have spent so much time and energy investigating and handing out flyers. I mean, do you think you'll finally be able to, grieve in a way when there is an indictment or arrest? Or?
I mean, yeah. With me, it's definitely been hard with doing all that, but I kind of figured she was dead ever since she was missing. I know my mom didn't, but I did, just because it's so out of character for her. I knew that I was never going to see her again. And that's the honest truth. And I hate to say it, but especially with the world we live in, I knew that I wasn't going to see her again. And so I kind of grieved her before I even knew she was dead. I really did. And so I've had a lot more time to come to terms with it than my mom has. And of course, I'm doing all this for Kristen, but I'm also doing it for my moms and for the other families.
Yeah, it's really remarkable, Ashleigh, how strong all of these families are. You saw our story last night. I mean, and the moms, they've all come together. They've been investigating these cases on their own. They've been pushing and pushing and pushing for justice. And they do feel like that moment is soon going to arrive.
Well, I sure hope it does for their sake, that's for sure. This is such a vulnerable population of women that, were targeted. Homeless with drug problems, many of them. Does Haley believe that there are other victims that might actually end up being a part of the case against Calhoun?
She does. And I'll tell you, Ashleigh, I mean, I hadn't been to Portland in several years. I'm not sure I've been to an American city where I've seen it quite this bad in terms of the homeless population, in terms of drug abuse that you just see out on the street. I mean, there are homeless people all over the place. There are these little tent compounds all over the place. It's just become part of the city here. It's very, very strange and very, very sad to see. And it's obvious that people who, had jobs and good lives fall into mix with all of that. And there are these overdose deaths that are questionable. I asked Kristen's sister about that.
Do you think there are other women whose deaths may have been classified as overdoses, but it was actually murder?
Yeah, 100%. There's so many people who die every day, and homicide is so overwhelmed, and even just missing persons and Portland PD, just everything. They kind of just want to open and shut cases as fast as possible, and so it's and then if there is drugs in their system, it's okay, they class it as an overdose because maybe they did overdose, but did they do that on their own, or did someone drug them? And there's so many scenarios where it goes, but I definitely think that there's more behind the scenes, especially with what we've found out investigating. It just, there's no way that that's not happening.
I think that's why, Ashleigh, everyone here is on pins and needles, because it's clear that there is this very, very active investigation happening behind the scenes. What police will come up with? Are they connecting these deaths together? Is there additional deaths that will be connected? Everyone in this community is waiting to find out.
I know Jesse Lee Calhoun spoke with a local station, and he denied any involvement in any of these crimes, saying that I'm an easy target, I'm already a felon, so they're trying to pin it on me. These were his words. But there was something weird that happened back in October. The state actually assigned him a public defender, but I don't get it because he's not even charged yet. What's that story?
Yeah, that is very rare. That doesn't happen very often. Normally, you would not get a public defender until you're officially a suspect in the case and you've been charged. But there are rare instances where it does happen, and it usually happens when someone is the target of a very serious criminal investigation, which again goes back to what we've been reporting, that he is in fact a person of interest. And that there is this active investigation happening behind the scenes that the DA and the police won't talk about, but that's further evidence right there. The fact that he was appointed this public defender even before he's officially been charged with any crimes.
And again, we have 5 women on the screen, but 4 at this point that they're saying Jesse is considered a person of interest. Brian Enton, I knew you'd get the goods. That's why you head out to the mysterious scenes. Thank you for this, and then look forward to what you find tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks, Ash.
All right, coming up, 2 wildly different depictions of Micah Miller's husband, Pastor John Paul Miller. And they come from the pastor himself in texts, affidavits, and police reports. He is a controlling and vindictive bully, but in public, he is a loving and devoted partner who is devastated by Micah's suicide.
I got this lay next to her body and spent time with her body about 4 times this week, and each time it still didn't hit me. I thought she was going to wake up. I even tried to raise her from the dead one time this week.
So what do Pastor Miller's movements and his mannerisms and his tone tell us? We've teed up a body language expert to watch and listen and tell us next.
And dirt are settling deep into your carpet fibers. Stanley Steamer removes the dirt you see and the dirt you don't. Your carpets aren't clean until they're Stanley Steamer clean.
Stanley Steamer gets your home cleaner.
None of us actually really behaves the same way in private as we do in public, right? Especially in church. Same actually goes for marriage, too. We're very different. But one of the oddest and most troubling things that came out of that's come out in the days since Micah Miller took her own life, is the 2 completely different people that her husband, John Paul Miller, seemed to be even in private. We have seen text messages from John Paul cursing and threatening Micah, and texts hours later begging for forgiveness. He admitted to placing GPS trackers on her car, slashing her tires, and posting a topless photo of her online. Did I mention he's a pastor? But Pastor Miller also delivered a tearful and truly bizarre eulogy at their church. Here's a bit of it.
Everyone knew how beautiful she was on the outside, but only, I think, a spouse knows how beautiful that person is on the inside. So I want to take a few minutes to just kind of tell some stories and just share some things about Micah that may, I don't know, shock you or help you get to know the more intimate side of her. As Christians, of course, we know she's not here and in heaven, and she's, worshiping and enjoying, and probably hadn't even had time to look down here yet. But I got this lay next to her body and spent time with her body about 4 times this week, and each time it still didn't hit me. I thought she was going to wake up. I even tried to raise her from the dead one time this week, and that morning, actually, I went to the mall later. She had bought me this dog tag, and the chain broke, so I went to the mall to get it fixed. And I saw a female about 20, 30 feet in front of me, and she was wearing one of Micah's dresses. And she had the same tattoo Micah has on her arm and the exact same hair. And out of just instinct, I screamed, "Micah!" And the girl turned around, and it was one of her sisters. And I thought I raised her from the dead. She's alive, you know. But I can't wait to see her again one day.
It is hard not to wonder, what does the pastor's body language tell us? Because there was a lot going on. Body language, as he talks about the woman, many believe he actually drove to suicide. And for that, I turn to Scott Rouse. He's a behavior and body language expert who trained alongside the FBI, Secret Service, and U.S. military intelligence. He co-hosts a podcast called The Behavior Panel. Scott, good to have you back on the show. Talk to me just about what we just saw. I saw a lot, and I don't know what to make of it.
Well, it's not just what we saw, it's what we're not seeing here. We're not seeing any grief here. We're not seeing what are called adapters, the things that we use to comfort ourselves, to self-soothe ourselves, like wringing of the hands, those kind of things. He's got what's supposed to be tears happening. That's not happening. He has no tissues there with him. His nose isn't running. He's trying to pretend it is, but it isn't. These are all the classic cues of someone who is faking an emotion. And if you'll notice, if someone's really feeling an emotion, that's what the emotions fire those expressions onto your face, in other words, from your brain, from your limbic system. And those don't last on him. We don't see grief. The little bit of grief there's a semi-sadness that we see in there is taken away by a smile. And the smile is more prevalent than his grief is, or than his sadness is. This is one of those things that shows so many things that are wrong with it. I'm actually going to use this in training because these are all the classics right here, all of them.
Wow. You're going to use this in training. Holy Dinah.
Yeah.
There's something I read that you had mentioned about a forehead, like tells in the forehead. What's that about here in this video?
Well, quite often we get what is referred to as the grief muscle. It's sort of like an upside down horseshoe that happens right here in the glabella area of the forehead. And when you see that, I can't do it. You may be able to, I don't know. It only shows up when someone is actually feeling grief. They're remembering something very sad. They've just lost someone in their family, or maybe a pet, and you'll see, or if they're in great pain, then you'll see the grief muscle show up. It shows up right there. We're seeing, and you could say, oh, this is Botox in his forehead and all that. He may have a little bit in there, but you would still see some movement up in here if he did that. I don't think he's feeling any grief here. We're not hearing it in his voice. His voice, he's under the impression when you're sad that your voice goes way high. Quite often it drops low and you can't speak. And when it's that high, it breaks too much. His voice is way too clean for this, way too clean for him to be as sad as he's saying that he is. Also, his arms are too far away from his torso. The one hand he's gesturing with, he's got one in his pocket, but notice you can see space in there. When we're sad, when we're trying to comfort ourselves, or someone is grieving like he's supposed to be, then you'll see the arms come close to the body. We're not seeing that at all. Not at all. Just his hand in his pocket, and he is swaying back and forth some because he thinks that's what he's supposed to do, but he's not doing it right. He's not doing the correct things he should be doing. That is an adapter, but he's not using his hands or his shoulders. His shoulders are too high. He's not bent over. So many things in this. I could go on for 30 minutes. I'll watch.
I got a spidey sense about it, but you've just put so much of it into actual language that makes sense. I want you to watch the other thing that we collected for you. Okay. It's John Paul announcing to his congregation the death of his wife the day after it happened, but he does it at the very end of his sermon. So take a look at that, and then I want to get your thoughts on it after. Take a look.
All right.
I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're going to have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can. I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And she wasn't. Y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her. And so I'm sure there'll be more details to come.
Okay, what do you make of that?
Again, we're not seeing things we should be seeing. No grief in the forehead, no grief in the face. His expression is blank. It's not sad. We're not hearing the low tone that we should be hearing. Before, we heard the thing where he's at the funeral all whiny and stuff, and his voice is really high. This is where he's trying to show emotion, and he's not really showing any emotion. Again, his arms are far away from his body. Why bring up his wife's medical, or not being able to get medicine during this? That's called a qualifier. He's qualifying what's happened to her. These are all this is so, it's horrible, but it's really good when you want to show someone the body language of what shouldn't be happening when someone's grieving or feeling sadness.
I thought the same thing. I thought as soon as he brought up her mental health in front of that congregation, it was humiliating to her, and I thought that is not somebody who wants to protect the memory of a woman he's supposedly grieving. Oh, you got to come back. That was fascinating, and I have a million more questions, but I'm out of time. Thank you so much, Scott Rouse. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Still ahead tonight, what would have and should have been a milestone in the life of Noah Pressgrove, his 20th birthday. But Noah's life ended far too early under circumstances far too ugly, and still more than 8 months later is far too murky. Tonight we've got a shocking update from Noah's family involving the police and a huge potential source of information that wasn't checked out. Story's next. Today would have been Noah Pressgrove's 20th birthday. His family would have made him a cake, or at least tried to call him, maybe FaceTime, since he might have been in the military, because that was Noah's goal after graduating high school a year ago in Comanche, Oklahoma. Instead, as you probably know, he died back in September on Labor Day after a party that lasted through the weekend. His battered body was found on the side of a highway, naked except for his shoes, one of which was not his. It took 8 months for the authorities to give the family an autopsy report, which suggests but does not conclude that Noah might have been killed in a hit and run. So today, instead of celebrating Noah's birthday, his mother marked the day with a balloon release at his gravesite and a Justice for Noah protest in their hometown. And the family told NewsNation exclusively something I could not believe, that police never searched the house where those kids were partying. One would think they could have learned a lot there. Like, was there evidence of a fight? Maybe were Noah's clothes located back at the house? Maybe there were some cameras. Certainly death investigators take time, and then the police aren't obliged to show their cards until somebody goes on trial. But here's a thought that might give hope to Noah's mom on his 20th birthday. Bring in the FBI, because they are pretty darn good at this stuff. That's our time tonight. Chris Cuomo's next.
All right, I'm Chris Cuomo. Today was the key day of the Trump trial. Michael Cohen was left last. Now, the question is, was he left last because he was the best for last, or because he was the trickiest for the prosecution? Today was about explaining to this jury how to value his testimony. That's what cross-examination is about. It's one of two devices. One is to show that the testimony is incorrect, okay? That's one reason you cross, to show that somebody's reckoning of facts, of circumstances, of understanding is off. The other thing that you use it for is to say, even if